Hey everybody, Why So Wookie here. In this video, we're going to take a look at the Season 6 from Pubg, everything that went on during the season, things that were added to the game, changes that were made, and then finally at the end, what we've got to look forward to coming into Season 7. So the first thing in Season 6 was obviously Update 6.1. Now the major features of this update was the new map Karakin. It had a lot of unique features in this map, for example, sticky bombs that destroy walls. It had underground caves that you could get in, which would have a rare spawn of a Mark 14 as a world spawn. Certain walls were shootable through in buildings, so it added bullet penetration for the first time in Pubg. And there's also, instead of a red zone, it was switched out for a black zone, which could actually physically destroy buildings. So again, much more in terms of destructible environments on this update in the actual map of Karakin itself, which is really good, mixed up the gameplay. It was a much smaller map as well, so it was a much more fast-paced action. The match takes about half the time of a Miramar game as well, so it's a lot better for a quick match. And overall, it was a decent addition to the game. Also in Update 6.1, we finally got the new motor glider added to the live servers, and that was on Arangal and Miramar. And they also released Survivor Pass Shakedown, which I'm sure you all know is pretty much the same as all the other Survivor Pass. You do missions and you work towards unlocking skins. And that was everything for Update 6.1. The next thing that happened during the Season 6 cycle was the 3rd anniversary skins contest announcement. So during this announcement, we found out which skins had won the competition to be added into the game and what they were going to be. We got one skin for an M416, we got a parachute skin, we got a hoodie skin, and I think that was it actually, which is all pretty cool. Now, congratulations to the winner on there. We even found out, though, which was interesting, how the votes divided up and what percentage of people voted for each one, you know, who participated in the vote. And we also found out when we were going to get the skins, which was towards the end of Season 6, which has actually just been given out within the last week or so. And that was the next thing that had happened. Now, the next thing that happened was the Twitch Prime promotion. Now, the way that this worked was you had your Pubg global account and you paired it up with your Twitch Prime account. And then once they were paired for I think it was 2 months, you got 2 different crates. So one was the pilot crate, which had a full outfit for your character, and the other one was the gunslinger crate, and again with a full outfit. And I think the gunslinger one actually had 2 weapons skins in there as well. And then that was the first promotion where you could pair these 2 things together, especially on console, and you could get some benefit from doing it. Now, if you've not created your Pubg global account yet, there'll be a card at the top of the screen that'll show you just how to do that from a video that I made a while ago, so that obviously this promotion's over now, but for when they do the next one, you'll be ready. Now, the next thing that we found out was the results from the first Pubg Labs skill-based rating test, and they announced that they found a decent amount of the community had participated in it, and then they'd got enough feedback where they would then be able to tweak it, ready for the second round of testing, which would come further down the line. Now, personally on this system, I quite enjoyed the system. I like the system of you perform well in a match, you get points, you move up through the tiers, bronze, silver, gold, diamond, master, etc., whatever they call them. And then if you perform badly, you'd lose points. The problem, I think, with this first iteration was it was a bit too easy. So if you had a good game and you got, say, in the top 10, you get like 30, 40 points and you'd go up a good amount. But then if you came, say, you know, after 50th place, so, you know, 50 to 100th place, you'd only lose about 8 or 9. So you could have like 3 or 4 bad games for one decent game and still, you know, stay about the same. So I think this first iteration was a bit too easy. Now, there was a little feedback questionnaire in the actual game itself after it had concluded, which you could select your feedback. And some of the questions were, do you think it was too easy, etc.? Did you like the system in the first place? And, you know, you could fill that out, and a lot of people did. So yeah, we found out the results for that, and we're looking forward to the second test. After this was the next major update, which was Pubg Update 6.2. Now on console, we had this delayed, I think, 2 or 3 times. which I think was mainly to do with the cross-party section of this, opposed to anything else that was actually in the patch, because it wasn't a massive one, to be honest. But yeah, so the first major feature for us on console was the cross-party play between Xbox and PS4, which now meant that you could play not just against each other as opposing teams, but you could play within the same team. So those people who have friends split across different consoles could now, for the first time, play together. They added Team Deathmatch to the game with 7 different maps, which is a little fun mode. I did do a video not so long ago about things that could be added to PUBG in order to make it, more accessible for newcomers. And one of the things that people had said for a long time was Team Deathmatch, to get people used to the gunplay without having to loot for 10 minutes and then just dying without any kind of learning. So it's a good step in the right direction. I'll put a card to that video above if you'd like to check that out. Also, they did some grenade balances and the blue zone visual changes. So a lot of the community not necessarily complained, but critiqued grenades for a long time. They were OP. I mean, sometimes personally I've been killed through a wall in a different room in a building before now when you're slightly damaged. And stuff like that. So they tweaked the grenades so they'd only damage you within a shorter range. They also made it so that if you was led down and a grenade was next to you, you'd take less damage as well, which was an interesting in terms of a tactical thing. And they also meant that you'd take less damage from grenades, varied on depending on which tier vest you had. So if you had a level 1 vest, you'd take more, level 2 vest slightly less, and then finally level 3 vest less still. So overall, grenades got a bit of a balance. They did do Molotovs as well, so the Molotov fire spread more, which makes them much more useful. And the grenades as well also took up more weight in the backpack as well, so that you couldn't just spam grenades at the end as much as you previously could. So all in all, positive changes there. The blue zone visual change was basically, previously they'd had this weird static effect where you couldn't really see through it, and it was an absolute nightmare if you were trying to shoot through it to someone. They made it much clearer now with much less static, and it was much clearer when the blue touched the ground where exactly it was, depending on what type of terrain you was. So they were all positive effects, which was good. And there was also blue zone noise added as well. So when you stood next to the blue, there's a little humming noise, and it's not even really annoying. I actually quite like it. But again, it means that if someone's camping right on the edge of the blue, they're not necessarily going to hear someone coming up on the steps, and then again, it adds another tactical thing there. And then the other thing in the update 6.2 was they did the second skill-based rating test. Now, personally, it worked to the same as the last one. You just opted in, and then you got a result at the end of each game, and you saw how you did. I think it went on for a week or two. But I personally think this one was much better because you still got good points if you did well, but you also lost a good amount of points if you did badly. So I think it was far more balanced this time round. There was more consequence to a poor game, which essentially makes it just more fun in the long run because it's challenging. And that was everything from update 6.2. Now, the next major announcement that came from PUBG was a community post about issues that had been facing PUBG, including crashing, FPS drops, DDoS attacks, and a much, much more. It was a post that was directed to the community to try and give some clarity on what was happening behind the scenes, the plans that PUBG were putting in place to try and resolve these issues, and just some kind of acknowledgement of the issues as well, because a lot of the community up until this point had felt like it was just getting ignored, they weren't doing anything about it, etc. I'm not going to go into it in too much detail in this video, but again, there'll be a card above going through that particular issue and the post that they did, and going through that. The next thing that PUBG did was they did another PUBG Labs test. Now this time it was for a ranked rule set test. Now the idea of this PUBG Labs test was to create a more competitive PUBG mode, which would nurture a more competitive environment, but they wanted it to be standalone from the esports rule set. So they wanted, essentially, PUBG had been going on for a long time now about having a ranked mode and having a full ranked leaderboard, because, I mean, at the minute, the survival title system isn't really a skill-based system, it's a how long can you play system, because if you played long enough in a season and had enough time, you would still get to survivor rank. Whereas if you played little but very well, had a high win ratio and a good KD and stuff, you're probably unlikely to do it because you need to input a lot of time to get to those levels. So the idea was that what they wanted to do and what they've wanted to do for a while is to have a ranked mode, which would have its own leaderboards, so that you wouldn't necessarily have to play a lot to get a good rating, if that makes sense. And again, I did a full video on this one, which I'll link in the description below if you want to check that out. And it was basically just the first iteration of the test on there, of which I'm sure we'll see more in the future. Now, the next major update was Pubg Update 6.3. Now, in this one, we finally got the new Panzerfaust weapon, which was teased at the beginning of the season, which was added to Kraken. Now, this is the first, one-shot and drop weapon, so you shoot it and it just drops the weapon and then you're down to just one weapon, which is pretty good. It can destroy the walls just like the sticky bombs can, and it's powerful, but I think it's balanced. You don't actually see that many people use it, especially out of, say, the first 5 minutes. I've never seen anybody using it in the late game as of yet. And then the other major things in the update 6.3 was weapon balances. So they changed the M249 for no longer being a crate weapon. The standard clip size was 75 and it could be extended to a 150, and it could also take a tactical stock. Now that particular change has been quite controversial within the community. Like, a lot of people think it's OP and stuff like that. And I think within the first week of them doing it, everyone and the dog had one in the final ring. But now, as it's gone on a little bit longer and people are learning how to counter them, the limitations of the gun itself, you don't see as many. Now, from my personal experience, I mean, the gun's decent, I take it sometimes, but it's not like an auto pick. There is a significant recoil to it, even with the tacky stock. I think at super close range, you're at a disadvantage because the time it takes you to pull up the gun in ADS is slower than it is on submachine guns and assault rifles. So the other guy can start shooting first if you both draw at the same time. At medium range, you're going to get beaten by something with an M4 if you're both in cover. If you're out in the open, that's when the M249 is great because you can just lay down a load of lead and you're going to hit them and get them eventually. But I think stuff like Sandhawk, it's like when there's always plenty of cover, there's trees everywhere, it's not been as powerful as you'd imagine. They may still decide to debuff it slightly. Maybe I'd tweak it slightly, through community feedback. But certainly from my experience, I've had people shoot me with an M249, I've spammed around with my M4 and just because of the recoil, and you've beat them in the fight because after the first couple of shots, their gun's bouncing all over and you just nail them with an M4. You know what I mean? So I personally don't think they should change it. I think it's found its own little niche now. Another reason why it's really powerful is against vehicles as well. So yeah, it can rip vehicles to pieces, but I suppose that's the point of an LMG. The other weapon changes, the DBS was taken out of crate. Now, I personally think this is far more OP than the M249 because I've been using the DBS quite a bit. I think it's great. But, I mean, I've one-shotted people with a free vest with it at close range. Now, you're never going to get that from an M249. You have 14 shots. It reloads super quickly as well. It's a very good gun. So, I think that's more likely to have a debuff, in my opinion. The Tommy gun was given an upper rail, so you can now put a holographic and a red dot on there, and it was buffed slightly in terms of rate of fire, etc. The Tommy gun's become competitive now, so sometimes I do pick it and I take it right to the end of the game, and it's fun to use. And then finally, the UMP 45 was buffed to make it more competitive, and it is super competitive now. The UMP is a top tier weapon at the minute. I've been using it a lot. In fact, I've been using it so much it's now rank 100 in my mastery system. But yeah, the UMP is really good at the minute. And that's that. That was everything from Update 6.3. Now, the next thing that happened during the course of Season 6, which was a great shock to almost everybody, which they did from April 1st through to April 7th, was the Fantasy Battle Royale mode. Now, nobody saw this coming. In fact, a lot of people, including myself, actually thought it was an April Fool's joke when they announced it, and we didn't actually think it was a real thing, which is quite funny. But, it added a fun mode. Now, it's the first event mode that PUBG have done, which completely changes the game. I mean, they've had event modes before, which have tweaked certain things and, you know, whatever. But nothing on this scale, which is positive for the future, because if they're doing more stuff like this, every now and again you have an event mode that lasts a week and it completely mixes up the game. It just keeps things fresh. It keeps people coming back to the game, which is a great thing. And they tested out a couple of different things in this. So one of the first time they've ever tested is a class-based battle royale in PUBG. So obviously you've got the Barbarian, the Ranger, the Wizard, and the Paladin, and they all have their own unique traits and weapons, etc. And that's the first time that anything like that's ever been in PUBG in terms of classes. So again, you know, that's a unique thing. They may do things like this in the future. There might be a specific mode, perhaps where you have a loadout, which would be interesting. And it was all good, so it's just a test thing. They might use this again in the future, they might not, but again, something different. And then another thing was the first time they've used a crafting system in PUBG. So you obviously, if you've played the mod, you'll be aware, but you collect the crystals, you get enough of the crystals, and then you upgrade your weapon or your necklace or your ring to the next tier, which like amplifies the benefits of them. And that's the first time that's been done in PUBG. Now, there's been rumours for a long time that there was going to be vest and helmet repair kits. So, I mean, this is a way that they could implement that. If you collect, like, 3 helmet repair kits, then you can repair your helmet. And now, if you've got a level 3 helmet, then that's powerful. Or if you've got a level 3 vest, you might not find another one for the rest of the game. Again, that's powerful. And again, it would add another dynamic to the game where, you know, you've got something else to think about putting in your backpack. It's a risk. Shall I take it? I might not find another. Or shall I just, you know, risk trying to find a new vest? And, you know, it's a thing that they could implement in the future. They may do, they may not. Again, it was a fun mode, and it was, you know, something completely different. I had a whale of a time playing it with a couple of the guys. And I think that the Wizard was my favourite class, which is pretty good. And again, it's bright for the future. They're trying out different things, you know. I think a lot of the community was opposed to it at first, but it didn't replace the normal game. You know, you could still play the normal one. You didn't have to play it, but I think if you did play it, gave it a shot, it was good fun. And that was everything from that update. Then finally, towards the end of the season, we got our first Season 7 teaser and the final return of Vikendi. And the basic gist of what we got from the trailer was there's multiple moving trains on the map now, which is a completely new dynamic that's on no other map. Dino Land is now implemented opposed to Dino Park, which is a much bigger experience there now. It's a full theme park, complete with a museum and stuff like that. They've reduced the amount of snow. It's more of a springtime, and that's the basic overview of it. Now, I did a full video on everything that we knew about that, which will be in a card above and also linked in the description below. So check that out if you want all the details on there. So, in conclusion, the biggest changes that have occurred during Season 6 was the new map Karakin with unique map-specific items, cross-party play on console, big weapon changes, mostly revolving around the crates, the testing out of Fantasy Royale mode, and finally, let's all look forward to Season 7. If you enjoyed this recap of Season 6 and found it useful and enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to see more. Wookie, out.